Lake with Billy Rorty doing a voiceover, 30th of December 1999. This is the 1974 festival going up the street at the courthouse. You'll see a lot of changes now. To the right of the courthouse there's a new, that is the Galway Band. They came to the festival that year and were a great attraction. They would be similar to the Artane Boys, but were very entertaining. Now this would be local groups. I think that's Letter League. Mrs. Macklin used to always put on a float, and that would be this. That's the LAI group, and that's one of the garages there. That would be the Urban Council, Mickey Cullion, again ESB, More Power to Donegal, their transformers on board, on the wire. Now the Morris men coming up the Port Road, doing their usual display of dancing. This is the coal lorry. I would say that's Tinnish Coal. Benny Sweeney possibly. That would possibly be an Austrian group. They used to come on occasions as well. Another band from around the county. There's Hannah Laughlin on the ICA float and Mrs. Hanley. That's Brady Hegarty's School of Dancing in the red. And Morris Dancers, more entertainment with them. I don't know what float that is. Possibly it could be the Mount Errigal. And this is possibly a bacon factory float. Now I'm only guessing. That's the Fire Brigade. McDade's of Ramelton. They always put on a float each year. That's the pantomime group from Ramelton. See, those houses are gone now, and you can see where the Oliver Plunkett Road is. Now, this is the famous Indians that came a few years. They were very colourful, very musical and very entertaining. They attracted huge crowds around town. Now you see the derelict place there. That has all been built up as Mullohery's insurance company, and to the right of that's Phil McLaughlin's pub, and on down was Vincent Callahan's surgery, and Patsy Gallagher lived down there in that part as well. That's Mary Cayley, works in the ESB, Mary Radistock. Teddy's shop there in the background in the square's gone. That's Charlie Doherty's little house there's gone, and Fleming's gone. That's a whole new dimension down there. The White House is gone there, where the buses used to stop for the cup of tea. That's Rosaline O'Donnell and the late Mrs. O'Hara. It's the children enjoying the dancing in the Market Square. The building behind is gone too. Packy McGettigan, Jimmy Ponsonby, providing the music for the dancers. There's no light wherever this is. Now, this would have been Fox's pub, if I remember rightly. And I'm just looking out here because I think Clannad could be here. They used to come into Fox's a lot in days gone by. That's Gerard O'Grady. He used to be with the Irish Press. Cormac Sheridan from the ESB. Myself. Jim Burney, the late Jimmy Burney from Ramelton. Vera Owens. That's some Ramelton people as well. That's Reba Graham. Tommy from Ramelton. Tommy Harlan. Vera Vaughan. Sheila Vaughan. Or Sheila Doherty, I should say. And a lot of their family members. No, actually, this was down in Sean Harvey's. Or Clement Harvey's, could have been at that time. That's Noel Smith. Noel now lives in Dundalk. This must have been at the singing pubs, possibly. Some folk from Ramelton, again, enjoying themselves. This is Gerard O'Grady. He was a columnist with the Evening Press, and he did a lot for us over the years. He always came and enjoyed himself, and we got great publicity. This is a snippet outside the cathedral on the Sunday morning on the way to Mass. It's the Galway Band. So this is Audrey Graham's wedding. Audrey worked with me in the ESB, and Sammy. They were married in Milford. And that's Mr. McManus, Alfie McManus, who was the engineer in the ESB. And that's the bridal party. Audrey has a big family now. I think some of them are married and working and doing very well for themselves. They live outside Rafo. That's the late John Freel and Francis Freel, meeting some relations outside the church in Milford. That's myself there to the right. And that's Eddie Ridge, the late Eddie Ridge. And the clergymen are long gone from this area. I don't know where they are now. That's some of Audrey's relations. Now that's Michael Blake, living in Dublin, the late Brady Laughlin, a neighbour of ours. And that's Bridge Blake and Gabrielle Gray. Gabrielle now works in Derry. That's our next door neighbour, Liam Rorty, also deceased. Now this is Patricia Rorty, married in Dublin now with two. That's Karen Blake and Anne Russell playing outside their home. And that's Granny Rorty at the sink. And that's Brenda Blake, and that's Patricia Rorty, Karen Blake and Brenda Blake. And that's Margaret Higgerty, Margaret McDermott. Margaret's married with two girls. She married Paddy McDermott. That's Tessie Mulrennan now. That's Mrs. Kelly, deceased as well. That's Mrs. Mulrennan of the Upper Burma. Greta Peoples and Margaret. And that's Maureen Kelly. And that's Eilish Swinney and her husband. Eilish met the husband at the festival and went to England to live with him. And that's some of the guests at the wedding. I wouldn't know a lot of these people because they're not local. Eilish's people came from Fanet. Her father was a professor in the college, or well, he's retired now. And that's the wedding party. That's Eilish Donnelly. And that's Mrs. Morris Swinney. And that's Michael Cullen and his wife, and Morris Swinney. That's Rosaline Malloy. Eilish Swinney again. I can't remember his name. He was a Morris dancer, actually. That's Louis Larkin. Louis lives over in Sion Mills now. I haven't got their married names. I can just go. That's my Aunt Rita, deceased. Mary Coyle. Margaret Higgerty and Dee McDermott. Dee's married in England now too. Now this is the Garden of Remembrance in Dublin. Patricia Rorty, Patrick Corn and Ita Daly. We went up to an FAI final one year. Van Harps were playing. That's Patrick Corn and Patricia having their snack. It was a beautiful day. That's Colin Dugan, Paddy Hart, Charlie. Oops. This is Dalymount Park in 1974, the year Van Harps brought the cup home to Donegal. They played St Patrick's Athletic and beat them. It was great celebrations because it was a great win for the county, and Van Harps were just a young team at that particular time. So the whole county flocked to Dalymount for that Sunday afternoon and the great victory. Billy Rorty was there with his Uncle Dan and Uncle Colin. Can't remember the score. This is Peoples of the Port Road. That's Eileen and Maya, and that's Jim Black and Susie O'Connor. That's the three Midlanches, and that's Mrs. Dean and her sisters and brother-in-law, Pierce Dooley and his wife and baby. Pierce was the boss of the ESB in those times. That's John Blake and Kathleen and Bridge, and that's Michael up at the window a long time ago. Again, this is the Port Road. If you see it today, you'll see an awful lot of changes in it, all for the better. This is the famous Irish kitchen. This is repeated every year, but it's great to have a record of it. This is the old forge again. Now, this is the AI group. I think that's David Skelly on a horse. Again, this is the Galway band. They were sort of regular visitors. That's where the Northern Bank is now. The school down there is gone as well. The last couple of weeks. Now that would have been the festival queen. I think her name was Reed, and that's Mickey Fish and Johnny McCormick. Now the old cars. Now just see. This is Thomas Keys. Thomas ran out of petrol, believe it or not, and the late Jamie Kendrick tries to get him sorted out again. You can see the vintage of the cars and the fire brigade. This is the Gaeltax float. Very colourful as usual. These girls put a lot of work in, boys put a lot of work. That's the late Dina McFeely. Was a great supporter of the festival too. And this is Patsy O'Neill's Carpet Centre gone. That's Liam Doherty and his HB ice cream. This is Jack Boyce, the late Jack Boyce. He was the town foreman. Looked after everything. The water to sewage and all the rest of it. That's Michael Swinney and the Donegal Oil Company, lorry. And that's Charles Kelly's, and that's the late Jamie Kendrick. And this is the ESB float. Eddie McCauley driving it. Trying to sell some insulation at that stage. That's the late Josie Gilroy and one of the McGraths, used to live in the Port Road, Morris Graham. Now, these kids have all grown up a lot now. This is now over 20 years ago. That's Aileen Rainey and Anne O'Donnell, both married down the south somewhere. And it's Nora McCoy, the High Road. And it's Johnny Murray. I think this is the Buncrana band. Oh, there's Charlie Collins and Bida and Josephine Bradley, and that's Jimmy Freel from Buncrana, late Jimmy Freel. He always liked to bring the band here every year. He did a lot for Buncrana, and he was the correspondent for the local newspapers in Buncrana. That's Mary McCauley and some of the girls, our daughters. So the ICA float, Hannah Laughlin and Liz Crumlish. They used to put an awful lot of work into it. And Ginny Midland, the late Ginny Midland and Mrs. Hanley. Ginny was a great violinist. Now this is the Sunday in St. Connell's Hospital. Now people will see a lot of changes there now because that's where the new town park is. But the festival made use of it long before there was a town park there. And we used to hold the band competitions. The bands would assemble down at Sam Rolston's corner. That's Josie Hanlon and a relation of his. That's Sean Kern and Mary and Jim Nallen and myself and Hannah Laughlin and the son Patrick Bradley. Patrick hasn't changed. That's Anne Russell. That's Nora Kern and Sean and the two girls and Anne Russell again. So that's Peggy Smith and that's Tom Broderick. Tom Broderick started the festival with Bernard McLinchy and I one night. Well, I've been into the grill one day and the two of them were having a meeting and we talked about a festival. That's Mary Stevenson, Gary Gray and Michael Blake. That's them relaxing. Gabrielle Gray as well, and that's Bridge Blake and John, her daddy. Bridge is in Australia now. That's the family, Michael and Kathleen. These were great afternoons for the family. Everyone went out and enjoyed themselves. That's Billy Watson, Jimmy Freel again. Now this isn't Galler's Hotel, this is Maureen, or Macari's Hotel, Maureen Murphy. And this is one of the people from Galway who used to come and stay in Macari's. And that's just a group of Mary McMenamin. Mary Fox now, Mary worked in Macari's Hotel in those days. She works in the hospital now. That's my mother and father coming out the back door with Kay, Alex's wife. I wouldn't recognise the back now at all. This is the Galway band, and this is the vinyl. today. That's Rosaleen Boyle. Rosaleen lives in Galway now. It's Duncan Doherty. It's Alan Speer. Alan used to do a lot of films at the festival. Rosaleen Boyle. Rosie and I went to boarding school in Dublin together. That's Tommy Patton, the late Tommy Patton. And Mrs. Walsh. Breed Walsh. And Vi Fenton. The late Charlie Green. And the late Wally Swinney. Charlie came home every year from England to the festival. Mary Fox again. A lot of these faces reappear and reappear, possibly because I knew them. Now look at the square now, that's all changed. That was Wilkinson's house to the right and Boyle's pub. All completely changed. You have a brewery there today. And the square doesn't look like it does there at all. That building is gone. Checking up in the pub. That's my Aunt Lily and Uncle Tom and Frank Kelly. Lily and Tom lived in Zambia all their married lives. Both Frank and Lil are dead now, but both buried at Cornwall. Tom comes on a regular basis to visit. That's the late Huey Dunlop and Mick Walsh from the ESB. And that's Audrey Graham and Pat Conahan. That's Marion Dorn, Lily's daughter from Zambia. Just here in holidays. That's Marion and her dad. I used to try and get as much as I could taken when these people were around just to have it. I'm so glad I have. It's myself with them. Now that's Dodo Winston, that's Jerry Meehan and the ESB yard, and John Friel, very camera shy. That's Dave Mullis from Dunlow, that Dodo Winston, a young Dodo. That's Anna Devine, John Devine, and Kitty Blake. And that's one of Jean Russell's children. That's the late Tony O'Shea, was a photographer. This is Tessie and Madeleine and Michael Morenan's wedding in the cathedral. And that's the Devine children. That's Mrs. Madeleine and her sister. I think her sister's passed on. That's her father. It's the Madeleine, a lot of the Madeleines there. Morenans. Charlie Madeleine. Josie Swinney. Josie used to play in Jodie Hines' band. One of the Hawkeyes of the High Road. Bridie McManus. Maura Doherty. Sally McGrath. Joe Callahan and Mrs. O'Callaghan. Charlie Collins and Bida. Margaret McCormick. Eilish Swinney. Nora Corn. Paddy McGavigan. Mrs. McManus. These are cousins of Tessie's. Josie Gallagher. This is the Midlands. Dan Swinney and Mrs. Doherty. Jean Lockhart, or Jean Russell. Dan Swinney. Mrs. Hunter of Ardadon and her sister, Mrs. Madeleine and Eileen Doherty. Mr. Mulrennan. I think his name was Martin, I'm not too sure. That's some of the Devine children. Tessie was a hairdresser and she worked in Josephine Devine's. This is Bobby Elliott's two twins. Just down the road. Machine lived a few doors. That's one of the McLinchys. Bernard's daughters. It's Dolores. Dolores is married in Milford. So I got her on camera one day. I'm sure she wouldn't know herself if she saw it now. That's Mary Winston. Now this is Father Joe Ruth. Father Joe Ruth was in Korea. I visited him at one stage. He's since died. Mrs. Gillen and May Gillen. Mrs. Hawkey of the High Road. And Father Ruth. Father Mark Coyle and Father McLoone. And that's Muriel, Stephanie McVeigh, her mother, Mary Coyle. This is some of the Kellys, Muriel Kelly's family. Mrs. Gillen again and Mrs. Grant. That's Josie Ewing, late Josie Ewing. That's Father Joe Ruth's uncle. That's Eileen Glenfield, Eileen Dorian. Minnie McManus. Some of the Ruths coming to the wedding. Mrs. Ruth. Angela O'Donnell. Daisy McConnell. Probably Amanda. Louis Walsh. Muriel Kelly. Hughie Hone. Mrs. Hone. Mrs. Doreen Ruth arriving for our wedding. Hugh McGovern, I think. And that's her father, Sean, the late Sean Ruth. Tony O'Shea taking the pictures. Tony did all the weddings in those days. Doreen went to live in Africa, but she's back at home now, living in Letterkenny. Patsy Goller and the late Josie Ewan. Some of the niece. Emily White and Breed Swinney up to see the wedding. Sean O'Donnell, the late Sean O'Donnell and his family. They have all grown up now too. That's the Dailies. And that's Mrs. McGettigan next door. She lived next door to us. They came from Kilmacrennan to live. That's Bella Doherty, Charlie McAteer. And I don't know which the children that is. This is John Gray and Mary. John came from Scotland and he worked in the ESB. Still around town. Now this is the senior citizens party in the Golden Grill. And that's Brendan and Mrs. Macklin. And that's Margaret and Bernard McLinchy and Aggie Shields getting the soup ready for the Anne and Alan and Jim Allen, Mrs. Stevenson and Mrs. Hannigan. And this is the senior citizens and enjoying their party. I wouldn't know a lot of those because they're from the outlying areas. It's Mrs. Stevenson again and Anne and Alan. Ken, the late Ken Curry and Paddy McCafferty, Father John McLoone. This was there's Hughie Swinney from across, he's deceased too. Mrs. Neely of the Port Road. Hannah Laughlin going round with the plates. Hughie Swinney and Mrs. Swinney again. And that's Alec Kyle. That's Bernard McLinchy. Very young Bernard. I'm sure he'd love to see that. Now that's the late Bishop McFeely. He used to always come down to the party. And he would go around and talk with them all. That's Seamus Brogan in the bar there, I see. That's a cuckoo. O'Donnell. He was a great character around town. He was just known as Johnny the Cuckoo. That's Bridie Laughlin and Mrs. Maxwell, Mrs. Peoples, the back road. And that's Tommy Gallagher, the Upper Burma, and Arthur Friel. A bishop still going round having a chat with them all. That's Mrs. Peoples again, Bridie Laughlin, Mrs. Maxwell. I'm glad to have those in Fulham because they were all neighbours. That's Mrs. O'Donnell, John O'Donnell's wife. Serving the meal, helping. Those are two ladies from the country. It's Adrian McLinchy with her party hat. That's Pointer Drain. Used to be a great footballer in his day. And he lived up the Long Lane. That's Sarah Tinney and Emmy Gallagher and Mrs. Sharkey. And these are three people who are deaf and dumb. Minnie and her brother and four actually, and Hugh McKendrick and his wife. The two O'Donnells lived down the Port Road and the McKendricks lived at Lower Main Street. They're all deceased now, unfortunately. And I see Peggy Gibbons' father there. Ah, there's Maggie Collins. Maggie was a character about town as well. Maggie used to write to all the VIPs all over the world. That's her with Peggy Gibbons' father. Again, Adrian Midlanche has to be on the shot. She's giving out Oatfield sweets. Everyone had a great day there, always. Oh, there's Nellie O'Donnell and Mag Donald, or Mag Doherty and Nellie's husband. There's Margaret Kyle in Green Hills at Ballymaleel. That's Nellie again. And Huey. Huey worked at Kelly's Mills. And he was a great fisherman. He would have fished the Swilly from out Dromore right that way. It's Mrs. Dugan, and this is Bernard Midlanche. On the grill. And Liz Midlanche. Bernard loved his cup of tea and his smoke. That's Paddy McBride. Paddy worked about the grill too. He was from down about Ramelton. And he was a great character around the town. That's the O'Donnells again. Oh, that's Mrs. Callan and one of her boys. And there's Johnny Cooker away dancing. And that's Mrs. McDade of the old town there to the right. Her boys have bands and played in bands all their lives. There's still Joey McDade. Would be a son of hers. Joey's a band as well. That's Anne Anderson, the nurse, dancing around there. I don't know these people because they're from out the side of town. That's Bernard and the Bishop again. And Falla McLoone. That's Mrs. Russell. Just a glimpse of her. That's the late Archdeacon Crooks. And Stacia Gallagher. Stacia McDermott. Stacia lived out at the old golf club. That's one of her boys actually. A young fella then. Now, that's Kay Gallagher. And that's Terry Ponsonby and Jimmy Ponsonby and Willie Conahan, not Willie Conahan, but Hugh Conahan. He used to ring the bells of the cathedral. Now, these are the men enjoying their drink at the bar. I think that's Pascal Blake behind the bar, and there's the late Jeff Pendergast coming in. Jeff was a manager in the bacon factory for years. These are two ladies enjoying their afternoon as well. Two gentlemen relaxing, or three gentlemen relaxing. John Friel with Jeff. Now that's Pascal at the bar. Very young Pascal. Now this is an ASB function. Eddie Ridge, John Friel, Pierce Dooley and Joe King